What's up, guys? It is Tyler. Merry Christmas. I hope everyone is having a happy holidays. It has been a while since I've done a video, but today I've got a really good one because in this video, am going to be going through the entire market of sports cards and attempting to quantify just how far the market has fallen over the past 3 years. And we're going to do that using a tool that eBay has, which is a research tool called Terapeak. And it is my belief that this is going to be one of the most comprehensive, high-level views at the market and really how the market has trended over the past 3 years. The methodology that I'm going to use is I'm essentially going to be looking at 30 players and looking at how much money has been spent on these 30 players individually across the past 3 years, 2 years, and 1 year. And at the end, there's going to be a summary that really shows, who are the biggest risers, the biggest fallers, etc. Now, there are other apps out there that you could use. I'm not a believer in any of them. I don't think that you need to pay for any of these things, such as Market Movers, Card Ladder, etc. You're completely wasting your money. There's free tools out there like eBay Completed Sales, the Terapeak data, which is all eBay data, PSA data, etc. There's no reason for you to pay for data. And if you want a comprehensive view at the entire market, I think this is the best way to do it. Now, there are some flaws with this methodology. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. But I do want to jump into it so we can kind of get the ball rolling a little bit, because this is going to be a lot of data. So if you all really want to know how far the market has fallen and how each player has performed over the past 3 years, then stay tuned, because this is going to be a lot of fun. It is Christmas, and I'm sure you guys have probably opened all your presents. So let's look at some sports card data. So first, we're going to look at Michael Jordan. And as you can see on here, this is essentially what we're wanting to look at here is data over the past 3 years and a couple key things I want to look at. So what I'm really looking at here is total item sales. You can see that 202 million total item sales. There's a couple of things that you can also look at, these spikes, and then also the average sale price. So this is going to give me an average sale price for the past 3 years. And then it's also going to look at volume sold. So this graph won't show you volume sold, which is a little bit unfortunate because you really have to hone in on that based by changing this time frame. So if I go to the last 2 years, you can see the average sale price dropped a little bit, but things got a little bit more stable. 159 million items sold. And then if we drop down to the last 1 year, it goes down to $98, but you can see things are a little bit more stable. But you can also see how volume is impacted by that as well. So again, we go back past 3 years. That's what it is. So one key point to make note of, what I did in looking at this data is I didn't narrow this down to the sports card market specifically. So you can see there is a difference between Michael Jordan sports cards versus everything. So the entire Michael Jordan market's 284. So as we go through this is, I'm not going into the granular details of making sure I'm choosing the right category, because you manually have to click that every single time. So, whenever you're looking for Michael Jordan, this could actually bring in shoes as well. He may be the one outlier whenever it comes to that. So if we just keep going down, this is going to be, again, interesting. So you can see the peak of the sports card market. This has been widely correctly identified as right around February of 2021. That's where the market peaked, and it has been a downtrend ever since then. And what we're looking at here is the average sale price for every single item labeled Kobe Bryant, which for the most part is going to capture the majority of the sports card market. And the average sale price has decreased. So we're at 130.94 for the average of 3 years. Of course, that's way higher in the beginning for Kobe. You can see some average things in February. I don't even want to look at that because it's almost an outlier. People are paying crazy money, but we're looking, 150, 170, plus. Now we're getting back here to, current times, we're around $100. So again, if we go to 2 years, you can also eyeball this and see how the volume changes. I did not calculate all of this out, but the one thing that I did calculate out at the end is the total sales, and I have this written out by year so that we can actually calculate how much money is being spent or not spent on players over time, and it's really interesting to see who dropped the most during this collapse. So we're going to calculate all that. So in the past year, the average Kobe Bryant sales dropped to $99. Does look like it's relatively stable. There must have been a bunch of high-end items selling in December. Seems like that's kind of a trend with a lot of these guys. So that is LeBron or Kobe. Now we're going to go to the King. So LeBron, his market, you can see his market crashed. The King market crashed. So volume 1.4 million, 171,000 total sales. Average sale price is 119. I'll make note that is less than Kobe Bryant, who was in the 130s. We go the past 2 years down to 84. Average sale price. Volume is 948. That's lower than Kobe's, which I think was 1.1 million, if I'm not mistaken, down to 79 million. So again, LeBron had about 15 million higher total sales in the past 3 years. You zoom that into 2 years, he's about 9 million higher than Kobe. You zoom into the past 1 year, and we're at 39 million. So it's about 5 million more than Kobe. But the average sale price continues to drop, so 78, and then total sold's 504,000. One thing to make note of here is this is obviously not taking into account volume of cards out there. LeBron has a ton of cards out there. And you'll see the players who have been out there the longest, like Tom Brady, you're going to see, he's had cards since the year 2000 all the way up until last year. So over the past 30 years, 146 million for Tom Brady. So he's very comparable to Kobe. Volume 1.4 million, very similar to Kobe. The average sale price was in the 130s, 140s. Now we've dropped all the way down to like 60s, 70s. Again, there's some spike going on here in December. So I don't know if a lot of people are liquidating high-end stuff just before the end of the year. That seems to be a little bit of a trend that we're seeing. Past 2 years, you can see steady decline. And then 1 year, we have another decline. So we're down to 29 million. Actually, this looks like it's maybe stabilized. The Brady market may have stabilized in the past year. Next, we have my guy, Patrick. Patty Cakes. So the Mahomes market, 95 million spent in the past 3 years. You can see we're starting off, in the 110s, lower than a lot of other guys out there. And then it has dropped precipitously. So we're down in the 60s, 70s. So the drop isn't necessarily, I think, a bad thing for every single player. If you think about it, Mahomes last year, or in 2021, had a higher proportion of cards hitting the market that were rookie cards. Now we've had 3 years plus of just garbage Panini products out there. Same with Tom Brady. That helps dilute out all the stuff that's being sold. So that's just one thing, a couple of just different nuances to think about. It doesn't mean that the entire market's crashing necessarily. It just means there's a lot of cards out there that are probably competing with each other and driving the average sales price down. So 34 million in the past couple of years. So you can see a lot of money was spent on Brady compared to Mahomes over the past 3 years. So 146 million compared to 95 million for Mahomes, but in the past year that has reversed. So we're looking at 29 million for Tom Brady, 34 million for Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes has $5 million more spent on him in the past year, which means more people are interested in his stuff. Tom Brady's out of sight. He's retired, the pump up, etc. That's kind of moved on. All right. This is going to be an interesting one. So I did not aggregate these players in any order. They just, as they popped into my head, I wrote them down. So Shohei Ohtani, love this. 90 million in the past 3 years. You can see his meteoric rise in 2021 whenever he had one of the most remarkable seasons I've ever seen. Just an incredible rise up and people wanting to buy his product. He hit a cold spell after the home run derby. You can kind of see that, and he started to trail off in the last year. He really didn't have a great second half in 2021, but finished as the MVP. 2022 had, I thought, a great year. So he was stabilized, had a really good collector base. Of course, that was the big pump run-up era. And then this year he had another run up, obviously, where he got on that home run pace. And then, once news broke of his injury, I forget exactly whenever that happened. I want to say it's probably around September. Yeah, it had to be September. Then we saw the decline, and now we're seeing the run up, and, we're probably going to be stabilizing. I imagine we're going to be stabilizing somewhere around here if I were to guess, but of course they're making more cards. So more cards out there, Topps is cranking the presses, etc. This is what's fascinating though. So his market is basically on par with Patrick Mahomes over the past 3 years, 95 million versus 90 million. We go the past 2 years, we see 61 million. 61 million. That's almost on par with Kobe. This is where it gets even better. So you can see the average sale price over the past, let's see, how did that change? The average sale price was kind of stable, 53 down to 46. Of course, there's more diluted junk out there. 1.3 million cards sold, high volume in 2 years. We go to last year, this is crazy. Probably the most volume out of any player that I've seen on here. The average sale price actually went up, 43 million. It is the second highest player of any person on this list, other than Michael Jordan's number one still. This is insane. So it is Michael Jordan and Shohei Ohtani. That is the top two most in-demand players in the market. So let's keep it going. How does his teammate Mike Trout compare? So we'll go through these a little bit more quickly. Those are the kind of the big ones that I wanted to touch on. Then we'll talk about some other ones as we go. Mike Trout market has completely collapsed. In terms of dollars spent, average sale price, etc., I think this has he's had rookies out a long time ago. So any subsequent year of releases is going to have a less diluted effect on the overall average sale price, if that makes sense. So whenever you see prices crash for him, it's not due to dilution as it is for like a Mahomes, who's relatively new and early in his career. This is the market crashing. So it could be Ohtani dollars going here. He's hurt. So 68 million in the past 3 years. You go to 2 years, we're down to 39 million. So, it's not a huge drop off. But in the past year, 18 million. So you extrapolate 18, it's pretty low. I mean, I don't think that's really all that great. And the average sale price is really low. There's a lot of volume, but it's a lot of low end stuff. All right, so now we're going to look at Ronald Acuna Jr. So Acuna's at 30 million, and prices are kind of all over the place. Past 2 years, volume 517,000, very low volume compared to some of the other players we looked at. Past 2 years, 16.8 million. Again, volume 323,000. You compare that to the past 2 years of Ohtani. He was 1.5 million or something. So almost 5 times as much volume. And then, we go to the past year. You can see, a little bit of an uptick maybe in the past year, just because of his MVP season. But we'll look at that. I mean, it's an uptick, but it's not like it's a huge uptick. So the other thing that I want to do at the end of this is quantify how much dollars were spent on all these players 3 years ago, how many dollars were spent on these players 2 years ago in 2022, and then how many total dollars were spent on these players this year, and what was that change from 3 years ago to now. So that will hopefully give us an aggregate view of just how far the market has fallen in terms of people allocating dollars to sports cards using these players as an index. So really cool ending that we're going to have here as we go through this. So number 9 is Luka Doncic. So almost a third way through. Luka, 77 million, market completely collapsed. Completely collapsed. Kind of like Mahomes, though. There's a lot more dilution out there with new products. Has a higher impact because his rookie was in 2018. So any subsequent year is going to have a massive dilution effect on his average sale price. I can go into that in a little bit of detail. If people are confused on that, just drop a comment and I can hopefully address it in the comment section. Volume 274, average sale price 120. So average sale price is still really high. And then we're going down to 106. All right, so 12.9 million. That is a massive collapse. We went from 77 million to 33 million in 2 years to 12 million in the past year. Just a huge market collapse. So if you extrapolate that 12.9 million, call it 13, for 3 years, that's 39 million. So his market has basically dropped in half. So his market has fallen in half in terms of the total dollars allocated towards Luka Doncic cards this year compared to 3 years ago. It's dropped in half. Okay, Zion, this is a big one. Oof, oof, oof. 50.6 million and a huge collapse. So what a trend that we're seeing here, these are guys who have a high dilution impact because they're relatively new players. So any new subsequent releases are going to dilute out the cards. But also, I do think that there is a huge impact happening in terms of the market just crashing because ultra modern basketball collapsing. These rookies not performing up to expectations. Zion, Luka have baked in MVPs and championships. Obviously, when that doesn't happen, dollars go elsewhere. 7.2 million in the past year. So we went from 50 million spent in 3 years down to 7 million in the past year. That means there were $43 million spent on Zion Williamson cards in 2021 and 2022. That crashed down to 7 million in the past year. His market has completely fallen apart. Insane. All right, keep it moving. Kevin Durant. This is a fun one. 35 million in the past 3 years. Market completely tanked. No dilution effect whatsoever. His market just completely collapsed. We go to the past 2 years. It just keeps collapsing. We're down to 14 million. That is incredible. 35 million down to 14 million. In the past year, the pain has not ended. We're at 6.7 million. So it's decelerating in terms of its decline. But I mean, at some point, nobody's really interested in the Kevin Durant market right now. Let's just put it that way. Stephen Curry, 64.8 million market. More stable than the previous basketball players, but still a steady decline. Go to the past 2 years, again, 506,000 volume, $83. So we're seeing some stability here. 42 million. This is probably one of the more stable basketball players that we can see. Now 19.8 million. So again, less dollars spent than there were in 2022, but only slightly so. And then volume is just relatively the same, if not maybe a little bit higher in terms of 2023 versus 2022 volume. Let's look at Giannis. And I'm just going to do the first name because who knows if I spell the last name right. Giannis, 46 million. And then 658,000 in volume. That's slightly higher than Steph Curry in 2 years. So again, Steph Curry has more volume, but he has cards for a little bit longer. Past 2 years, 444,000, 26 million. So it means he had $20 million spent in 2021. So 26 million since then. And then we go the past year, 12 million. So that means it was 14 million in 2022 and basically 12 million. So again, slow decline, but big decline, especially compared to 3 years ago. But the market appears to be somewhat stable for Giannis. Ja Morant. So this is one, let's go to 3 years. Massive. What a massive crash. $58 million in the past 3 years. We go to 2 years, we're at 35 million. And then we go to the past year, we're down to 11.2 million. That's crazy. That means in 2022, there was roughly $24 million spent. That is, in 2023, dollars spent is less than half what it was in 2022. Don't play with guns at the strip club or anywhere. Oh, let's see. Messi. Let's look at the soccer market. So 41 million. We go to 2 years. We are down to 26 million. In the past year, we are at 14 million. So very, very stable. Soccer, very stable. We look at Ronaldo. We go 3 years ago, 26 million. So his market is much smaller than Messi's. 15 million in the past 2 years. To go the past year, we're down to 7.6. So roughly in half. We are halfway done, and then we're going to do some summaries here at the end. Mickey Mantle. So let's do some vintage, just in case you are wondering. So 75 million, and you can see prices relatively stable. Got the hiccups. Get a little drink. 48 million in the past 2 years. Again, prices are stable. And then in the past year, volume is actually lower than what it was 2 years ago, but prices are still relatively stable overall. So again, 24 million, you extrapolate that out. Yeah, it's basically the same amount of dollars spent on Mickey Mantle. That has not changed. What about Willie Mays? So let's do old Willie. 33 million. Wow. Just perfect summary of vintage right now, where it really is a mainstay. It's not speculated against, or I mean, it kind of is maybe, with some of the influencers thinking that that's a safe haven. Whatever. Just collect whatever you like. I don't get all these people trying to park their money in something that's not going to move. That's neither here nor there. 21.4 million for the past 2 years, and then you go in the past year, we're at 11 million. So again, very stable vintage market. If we go to Nolan Ryan, this is a guy who, even with modern cards that are released, still does well. Has a strong collector base for a Hall of Famer, but also has modern cards released, including autographs, etc. So 26 million in the past 3 years. Past 2 years, we are at 18 million. And then the past year, so about 9.9. So it looks like it's maybe accelerated compared to what it was 3 years ago. Very slightly, maybe a million or so. So that means more money is pouring into the Nolan Ryan market. At least that's what it seems. This is a good one. Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, 19 million, almost 20 million. And the prices have steadily decreased. Then we go the past 2 years, 10.5 million. The average price, kind of collapsed. Then the past year, average price continues to go down, 5.2 million. So steady decline. Peyton Manning. Let's do Bryce Harper. This one's an interesting one because he did change teams during this time. So Bryce Harper market average sale price very low, 13.7 million. I just wanted to pull in some fan favorites, and there's more baseball ones that we'll look at. 13.7 past 2 years, 10.9, which means he only had $3.7 million spent on him in 2021, but in the past 2 years he has an average of $5 million. What does it look like in the past year? In the past year, we're at 5.2. So yeah, the market picked up a little bit compared to what Bryce was doing 3 years ago. But again, it's only a million or two. Now we're Aaron Judge. 33.6 million, huge spike right around here. This is whenever he was going on his home run pace. So a bunch of people must have liquidated a lot of cards. This is whenever he hit 60 or is on pace for 60. So his market's overall relatively stable. It's going to be fascinating looking at Aaron Judge and also Jeter, which is 2 players from now. So 33 million in the past 3 years. You look at the past 2 years, it's 29 million. So in 2021, he only had $4 million spent. That's jumped up to 14.5 million on average in the past 2 years. If we look in the past year, we're at 10 million. So, really 2022 was a bigger year than what it was in 2021. We've kind of regressed a little bit, but still a stable 10.3 million. Prices have declined. He was hurt last year, so it's a big contributor. I think that's probably going to go up next year, assuming he stays healthy. Because whenever he is healthy, dude hits bombs. All right, Junior. King Griffey Jr., 45 million. For the most part, stable. These spikes, again, it's very hard to say anything about that. Just cards were going through the moon. Past 2 years, 28 million. Very stable prices for the most part. I mean, relatively speaking. The past year, 14 million. So 14.5 million extrapolated. What is that? 43 million-ish for 3 years. So his market basically hasn't budged in terms of total dollars that are spent. Of course, the dollars are being diluted because there's more cards out there that are coming to market. Derek Jeter. And of course, this could also mean, there's more cards that are getting made now, which is, of course, going to pull down the average sale price, especially base cards. But dollars could also be concentrating, and this is for every single player. They could be, and I think this is the case, it's concentrating into really good stuff. So the stuff, whenever you look at cards that are available on eBay, the cream of the crop is still selling very, very well. The highly speculative stuff that sports card investors talking about, that Gary Vee is talking about, a lot of the stuff that they were talking about during the pandemic in terms of base cards, that stuff has died, whether it's speculative rookies, whether it's base cards, LeBron James, Lakers Prism rookies, all that stuff is completely dead. The stuff that has always been very desirable is still performing very high. But the very high end, that stuff, which again was highly speculated, National Treasures rookies, exquisites, limited logos, all that stuff is crashing back down. It's still very high, but it has completely crashed. The bottom has fallen out of it. That middle tier, so like 90s inserts that don't change hands very often, what you really need in order for prices to stay stable, and if not go higher, is you need the availability of the card to not be as available as it is. So like a championship or a contender's ticket, Tom Brady. That is always on the market. So the prices on those have been coming down. But you need something like a rare insert that rarely pops up that a collector really wants, because collectors are the ones that are really driving these prices. That's what you need to really focus on in terms of having price stability, is parking money in those things that rarely show up. So the cream of the crop, the things that rarely show up, those are still doing very, very well. But a lot of these prices are getting diluted out because of just the sheer amount of junk that's getting put out there. But of course, you can see a lot of these guys are still performing, or there's still dollars flowing into the markets. For the players who aren't performing, like the ultra-modern basketball players, dollars are getting sucked out of that market and getting spent out, elsewhere. But at the end of this, we're going to talk about the market and how many total dollars have been allocated to these 30 players. You can almost view these 30 players as its own index. How many dollars have been sucked out of this market in total over the past year relative to 3 years ago. And that's going to be really fun whenever we talk about that, because I have the number. It's going to be fun to look at. All right, Derek Jeter over the past 3 years, $39 million. This is going to be fun looking at it compared to Aaron Judge, because Aaron Judge in the past 3 years was at 33.6. If we look in the past 2 years, the Jeter market has really collapsed. So in the past 2 years, Jeter's at $19 million, Aaron Judge, $29 million. All the dollars went to Jeter. All the dollars went to Aaron Judge. $10 million spent more on Aaron Judge cards in the past year relative to Derek Jeter. Almost a third more total dollars spent on Aaron Judge compared to Jeter in the past 2 years. That's crazy. Especially whenever you look again, the past 3 years, more dollars were spent on Derek Jeter, which means that 2022 massive impact on the New York Yankee collector market. And then in the past year, how did things stabilize? So despite Aaron Judge being hurt, more dollars are still being allocated to Aaron Judge relative to Derek Jeter. So I think Aaron Judge had more of a detrimental effect on Jeter than any other player. They're competing for the same dollars, almost like an Ohtani Mike Trout effect. More dollars are flowing into Ohtani relative to Mike Trout for those team-based hardcore collectors. That's a theory. I don't know if that's true or not. All right, we're almost done here, and then we're going to go to some of the summary slides. So Juan Soto. The past 3 years, $25 million. Jeez, this one's fun, and the next one's actually going to be really fun too. What a collapse. What a abysmal collapse. I'm just thinking of all those, US 300 Topps Update PSA 10s that Gary Vee was pumping back in the day. And, I think they were hitting 200, 300 during the pandemic. Average sale price for his cards, we're looking almost at $100. And now we're down to, we're less than 30. We're almost less than 20. This is crazy. Volume 588, the past 2 years down to 438. So a lot of volume in the past 2 years. And then the past year, 231, 5.6 million. What a collapse. We went from 25 million to 13.9 million to 5.6. So it is decelerating, but less dollars on an annual. It would not surprise me. He did go to the Yankees, so who knows? Maybe that could compete for Aaron Judge dollars, depending on how well he plays. Maybe not. I don't know. Depends on if the whole team's good. Fernando Tatis Jr., this one's also really fun. 31 million in the past 3 years, and again, another complete collapse. And I think this one, again, also has a lot to do with the player. $10 million in the past 2 years. That means $21 million were spent on Fernando Tatis Jr., people pumping up and speculating on his cards 3 years ago in 2021. The past 2 years, that's crashed down to an average of $5.4 million per year. In the past year specifically, zooming in, it's $3.9 million. So the decline continues for Fernando Tatis Jr. He will never be able to recover his market. His market is dead. Nikola Jokic. This is a fun one because, to me, I think he's the best basketball player on the planet. He's the most underrated, undervalued, and he has the smallest market. I don't get it. I really don't get it. This guy's market should be higher than Doncic. It should be higher than Kevin Durant. It should be higher than, LeBron. Well, LeBron's had a lot of cards out there, and people think he's the GOAT. So I see LeBron, MJ, and Kobe. I get it. People are going to spend more dollars on them. They're on Mount Rushmore. But some of these other guys, Steph Curry's working his way up towards Mount Rushmore. This should not be this small. So in the past 3 years, we're at 11.2. The good news is it is picking up. So 8.1 million in the past 2 years. So that's jumped up a little bit. And then we go in the past year, we're zooming in further, 5.6. So it's accelerating up. Barely. Barely. 5.6 million. That's a market that is still half the size of Aaron Judge's market last year. It's also half the size of Willie Mays. It's also half the size of Ja Morant. How is that possible? In the past year, so he's an MVP winner. He is also a world champion. His market is higher than some guy who thinks he's a thug on the streets of Memphis. I don't get it. I really don't get the average basketball fan who's dropping money on these guys. Nikola Jokic, a lot of it also is the availability of cards as well. So a lot of Jokic's cards were made during the era where there's not a lot of cards that are printed, more like a Giannis type. So I think comparing him to Giannis, but again, Giannis's market is still twice as much as Jokic. So very, very confusing. This is another fun one. A lot of people are going to lose their butt on this one. $31 million spent on Wander Franco, complete collapse after he pulled a Josh Giddey, or he did the original. He did the Franco. Josh Giddey did the Franco. He was the freaky Franco. $23 million in the past 2 years. So that means there were $8 million spent on Wander Franco in 2021, $23 million in the past 2 years, which is an average of roughly almost $12 million. The past year, that has gone down to 9.7, and that is going to continue to spiral downwards. Next up, we got two more. Julio Rodriguez. $27 million spent in the past 3 years. This is going to be a fun one because in the past 2 years, that number does not change much at all, $25 million. So it means in 2021, only $2 million spent on J-Rod cards on eBay. Past 2 years, that's $25 million. So a huge upswing. You can see the average sale price, though, absolutely collapsing. This is a massive trend. This is something I'll touch on in a different video at a different time. If you're buying rookie logos of a player early in the year, or even in the middle of the year, or even in the later part of the year, you're competing with future releases that have a rookie logo on them, and it is going to completely crater prices. So his price is completely collapsed. They kind of rebounded a little bit this year because, not this year. They collapsed this year, but they may have rebounded a little bit, maybe going into the off season. So people are getting hyped for spring training already. $13.8 million spent on J-Rod cards, but the average is just really, really, really low. And then I wanted to sprinkle in some hockey. I think the guy who has the highest market, most dollars, it's not Connor McJesus. It is the GOAT, the great one, Wayne Gretzky. So $24 million in the past 3 years. Connor McDavid may be higher. I know in the past year or two, Gretzky was higher. So 13.5 in the past 2 years. And then we go in the past year, we're at 6.3. So maybe a little bit of a market pullback for Gretzky. But it is what it is. Okay, so as you got a chance to look at this, hopefully everybody zoomed in on the average sale price. They got a chance to look at volume. That's really important to see how many times cards are trading hands, because it's not just the price, but you also need volume. Volume is a big gauge of the overall market. You combine those two together, which is the overall total item sales, which to me is the primary metric that you want to look at to see how in demand a player is. So if you're thinking about setting up cards at a show, or you're thinking about buying cards and you want to sell them on eBay, Obviously, you want to know where people are allocating their dollars. This is the best way to do that. So what I've done now is I've blown this up into a spreadsheet, and lots of data on here, but essentially what we're looking at is these are every single data point that I read off earlier, and these dollars are in millions. So as we go through here, we have every single player listed, and there's no order to this, just the order that the players were popped up into my head. And then these are the first column C is millions of dollars spent on that player, and then also across the index, again, in millions. So again, Michael Jordan overall market in the past 3 years, there were $284 million spent on Michael Jordan cards. In the past 2 years, $159 million spent on Michael Jordan cards. And then in the past year, $79 million spent on Michael Jordan cards. So what I ended up doing is I had calculated what the annual spend is for each of these players for 2021, 2022, and 2023 using this data. Obviously, I know what the 2023 spend is because that's the last year spend. I know what the 2-year spend is. So if I know what the last year spend is, I can calculate what 2022 spend is, just using a simple formula. And the same thing for 3 years. So again, as we've looked at these, I can see exactly what the total spend is by year for each of these players, and you can see whether it's accelerating or decelerating, etc. This last column is really looking at how the overall market changed for that player, looking at 2021 annual spend relative to 2023. So did it go up by a percentage or did it go down by a percentage? And then of course here at the bottom, we can see what each of these metrics is in aggregate across the entire player index of 30 players. So I'm going to summarize this before I jump into the data, why I think this is the best index out there. And again, this is very high level. It's not looking at specific cards. This is looking at a macroscopic view of the entire market. Most of the indices out there that you're going to see that are proprietary are looking at a slate of 500 to 1,000 cards. PWCC has one. I think Sports Card Investor may have one. I think they have some utility. I think this is going to be a better one because this is not looking at individual cards of a player and them hand picking different items that may have stability or volatility, etc. This is looking at a lot of players in their entire market on eBay, which is basically the predominant sales marketplace online. Of course, there's PWCC. Of course, there's Golden. Of course, there's all these other ones. Those are small chops compared to what eBay market is. So this is a very good surrogate marker or indicator of what the overall market is for these players, because most cards do show up on eBay. And in addition to that, I'm not looking at one specific card like an 86 Fleer MJ or a specific 90s insert or a specific highly speculative ultra-modern basketball player. I have a very good cross-section of a lot of players that just popped into my head. And of course, there's more of them that I could have included, including some more highly speculative players whose bubbles have popped, but also some Hall of Fame players who, if you look at their Terra Peak data, have stability. So we're going to talk about the pluses and minuses of this. And of course, you can continue to build this out and look at this across a lot of different mechanisms. But I thought it would be interesting, again, to look at how the market changed specifically for these top 30 players, as these are, hobby dominant stars over the past 3 years for the most part. So as we look, 3 years ago, the market was dominated by, a lot of players, right? Michael Jordan, $125 million spent on his cards. And memorabilia, etc. Kobe was next at 92 million. LeBron was at 92 million. Kobe was 86 million. We jumped down to Tom Brady at 69 million. That was double what Patrick Mahomes' spend was. So Patrick Mahomes at 38 million. Luka Doncic, $44 million. So a lot of money was basically being poured into Luka. Zion, 32 million. So these were massive markets at that time in 2021. Think peak bubble. The market was coming down. So the majority of 2021 was a market crash. Of course, we had that beginning part, which was a not just a market crash, but it was the bubble. We were at the peak of the bubble, but also began the crash. Jumping down, Jeter, 20 million. I mean, just crazy dollars being spent. Total annual spend in 2021 was $827 million. So just think about that, $827 million. Fast forward to 2022, you can see a lot of these numbers have regressed. I mean, and they have regressed considerably. Of course, there's some here at the bottom whose markets also jumped up. So Aaron Judge was a big winner in 2022. But by big winner, you can see not really that great compared to how much speculative money was being poured into Zion. So again, the Zion market, $32 million. Luka, $44 million. I mean, people are speculating a lot of money on these players. The guys who actually were performing well, like an Aaron Judge, who had an amazing 2022, $18.6 million. Or even if you look at Ohtani, Ohtani's 2021, which is amazing. This was during peak bubble era, only $29 million. So more people were spending money on Luka Doncic as opposed to the baseball player having the greatest baseball season of all time. At that time, 2023 actually may be the better year, as evidenced by the dollars that are being poured into it. But it just blows my mind the amount of money that people are pouring into speculative players in 2021. And of course, I'm flipping during the time. Hey, you dummies, you all want to invest? I'll flip. I'll just do my thing. All right, go to 2023. This is where things have changed tremendously. So obviously the Michael Jordan market pulled back pretty considerably, but it's stable. The Kobe market pulled back considerably, stable. The LeBron market pulled back considerably. For the most part, it looks stable. Now, prices on individual cards are continuing to crash. So if you want to zoom in on that, you can. But they're pumping out so much crap annually, and they're still making LeBron cards. So, his market is still, really, it is declining, 40 million to 39, but it's, for the most part, stable. Tom Brady market collapsed. So we've gone from 69 to 48, and it's basically almost half the amount of dollars are being spent on Tom Brady this year compared to last year, and almost a third of the money being spent compared to 3 years ago, which is crazy. How does Patrick Mahomes' market work? So this is a good one too. So $38 million in 2021. Of course, he won the Super Bowl in 2019. In the spring of 2020 was whenever he won the Super Bowl. It was the 2019 season. So a lot of money was spent on Mahomes in 2020. 2021, that kind of carried over. 2022, not as many dollars spent because if you remember, that was the year coming off 2021 where they get beat out in the playoffs. So in 2023, more dollars are being spent because they won the Super Bowl in the spring of 2023 or, February of 2023. So, Mahomes is he's the guy again. So he's now surpassing or trying to not surpass, but he's trying to reach Brady. So that's the narrative in terms of how those narratives have swung. So it was Mahomes, then all the money. I did not include this. I should have gone in and looked at Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. And Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. That one's fascinating too because you can see a lot of dollars spent on those guys during this year, and then the dollars come back to Mahomes. Almost a third more dollars spent on Mahomes this year compared to last year, again, because of the Super Bowl. You can see also the market decline 3 years ago to 2 years ago. MJ, 36% decline. Kobe, 60% decline. LeBron, 57% decline. In terms of total dollars spent relative to total dollars spent 3 years ago, 57% decline. 10% decline on Mahomes. So his market's still stable. Still stable out there, guys. Shohei, though, $29 million, $18 million. He kind of had an MVP season, but it was a down year for Shohei. $43 million spent in 2023. One of the greatest, if not the greatest baseball season of all time. Cut short due to injury, sadly. 48% increase in 3 years. And if we look over the past year, it's over 100% increase. So just massive, massive upswing for Shohei. Mike Trout market down 37%. Not as bad as Kobe, not as bad as Brady, not as bad as LeBron. But also lower dollars spent on Mike Trout. Ronald Acuna Jr., 29% decrease. Of course, an increase by roughly 50% year over year if we look at 22 versus 23. Luka, just a massive collapse in Luka. And I feel bad for a lot of the bag holders. I do have one card left, an on-card autograph rookie, number to 99 PSA 10. Probably should have sold it 2 years ago. Some of those cards you put in a collection. Probably will sell it. I don't know. Down to $12 million compared to $44 million. So his market is roughly almost a fourth of what it was 3 years ago. If we look at Zion, just again, same story. I'm surprised that Luka's market collapsed as much as Zion because Zion doesn't play and he's fat. Luka at least plays and is good. Luka's problem is he cries too much. People don't like crybabies. Like, stop being a crybaby. Kevin Durant, I don't know how Kevin Durant's market is less volatile than Luka's. I really don't get that. Steph Curry down 13.6%. There's those comparisons. Mahomes, Steph Curry. Mahomes is Steph Curry on the field. Same thing in the markets. I mean, those guys are chronically stable, likable players. Okay, the families may not be like so many comparisons. Families may not be likable, but the players themselves appear to be very likable and they win championships. What can you say? Giannis down 40%, and that's bizarre because during that time he's won MVP and also a world championship. World championship. So very surprising. 20 million 3 years ago, 12 million now. John Morant, again, more people spending speculative dollars on John Morant relative to an MVP, on pace to being one of the greatest players of all time. And Giannis, very likable dude, but they, for whatever reason, are attracted to John Morant because, for the culture, hashtag. I don't get it. Messi, 15 million, 12 million, 14 million, down 6%, very stable. But of course, cards are relatively new for soccer, so they're making a lot of cards, but they're diluting the piss out of the soccer market. Mano market. No, we're not on Mano market yet. Ronaldo's decreased pretty considerably, down 36%. Apparently, he's played like crap, but I don't follow soccer. Mickey Mantle, very stable, chronically stable, 27, 24, 24. Willie Mays, 12 million, 10 million, 11 million. So vintage has been stable over the past 2 years in terms of dollars spent. Nolan Ryan, 8 million, 8.1, 9.9. So market slowly increasing. That's very healthy. Very healthy. That means, they're obviously not making any new vintage cards. They're making Nolan Ryan new cards, but not as much of that as, the market for the most part for vintage is likely old cards trading hands relative to newer cards. So it's a very healthy upswing in terms of total dollars spent. That means there's a slightly higher interest in vintage, over the past couple of years, or at least it's a healthy, following inflation. Let's just put it that way. Peyton Manning down 46%. That's crazy. But stable over the past 2 years for the most part. Bryce Harper, slight increase over the past year. Aaron Judge, massive decrease over the past since 2022, and it's because he was hurt, but huge upswing from 3 years ago. This just goes to show whenever you're selling cards, you're preying on people's emotions. Out of sight, out of mind. That is a rule. That is a concept that plays in cards. Out of sight, out of mind. Nobody buys your cards whenever you're hurt, or at least you're at a lower rate. I won't say nobody, but it's roughly a third of a drop-off in the past year, or almost 40, 50%. King Griffey Jr., very stable. Very stable. Strong collector base. That's a guy that you want to go after. Derek Jeter, again, maybe competition from Aaron Judge. Have heard a lot of Jeter people are pulling out of the market, but it does appear stable in the past 2 years. Juan Soto, market's in free fall. It may be picked up by New York Yankees, possibly, maybe. I don't know. Fernando Tatis Jr., probably, it is quantitatively the biggest market collapse in terms of total dollars spent by far, 81.4%. Next up on that would be Zion, and then it looks like Luka. Dang, that's massive. And then Kobe. It's crazy. Kobe's up there. Bad company. All right, next one. We got a big winner. Nikola Jokic. Boy, they are spending money on Nikola. So his market is on par with Juan Soto, whose market is on fire. It's burning. But somehow Nikola Jokic's market is still stuck at that 5.6 million number. I just do not get it. I do not get it. That should be in the double digits in terms of millions. So really confusing, but up 80%. He's one of the big winners. Wander Franco, big winner. J-Rod, I don't believe this being a big winner because if you invested in his cards, you certainly were a loser. If you flipped in his cards, I don't think you did very well. I mean, 2022, the beginning parts, you could have flipped really well, especially some of his Bowman's Best autographs and his first prospect stuff. But once they started pumping out rookie logos, you were just competing with each new release. Same thing for Wander Franco. I mean, they're diluting the rookie logo. It's such a scam. One of those things that you really should avoid and from flipping because it is just a falling knife with every rookie logo release. Wayne Gretzky, market crashed, and then relatively stable. So as we look at these, this is going to how we summarize this and put these numbers into context. In 2021, across this index of 30 players on eBay, there were $827 million spent on these individual sports cards. In the past 3 years, it's $1.87 billion. So it's a massive industry. In 2022, that number crashed down to $535 million. So almost $500 million were spent in aggregate on all these guys' cards and memorabilia, presumably. And then $508 million in 2023. So that represents a 38.55% decrease in total spending looking at 2021 versus 2023. So what is my final conclusion on the overall market downfall and whether or not we are experiencing a crash? Well, I've quantified using Terapeak data, not looking at individual cards, not looking at an index of 500 cards, but looking at the entire market on the biggest marketplace available. I've quantified that there's a 38% decline in total spending in the market. This does not mean that in aggregate, every single card dropped by 38%, although that may be, in the ballpark of where we're looking at. But there's a couple assumptions that we have not included in here, so that I've mentioned them. One, this is not all-inclusive of every single player, because over the past 3 years, there have been highly speculative players. Think rookies, the quarterbacks in the NFL. Think the basketball players like the LaMelo Balls, where a lot of money was pumped into, and those dollars they were there in 2021. They disappeared in 2023. They went somewhere. They may have went into here, but those markets have essentially evaporated. They do not exist. I don't think those people have a market anymore. So there's that, where this number that I have, the negative 38% in 2 or 3 years, that may be an under representation of what the actual decline is. But then you also have to bake in the chronically stable collector bases, for which there are many out there. I have some on here. You can see the Willie Mazes, you can see the Mickey Mantles, you can see the Nolan Ryans, there's the Hank Aaron's, there's the Jackie Robinsons, the Roberto Clementi's, all the Hall of Fame players, the Ty Cobbs, the Babe Ruths, the Ted Williams. All those players, baseball being a big sport, buoys the market. Then in basketball, you can look at the Magic Johnsons. You can look at the Allen Iversons for modern, highly collected players. Tim Duncan's, Dirk Nowitzki's, Vince Carter's, Anthony Hardaway's. Yeah, some of that stuff was speculated 2021. That's stable in the past couple of years. But depending on how those numbers shake out, the stable ones like the vintage baseball guys may have buoyed the market. Some of the basketball guys, because Gary Vee was saying, buy Tim Hardaway rookies. I can't believe they're so cheap. There could be a lot of that where those obviously crashed down to where they needed to be, because none of those cards needed to be bought, because there's no reason to buy them, because there's one for every man, woman, and child out there. But that's neither here nor there. So that is just me discussing the flaws that are with this methodology. Obviously, it's not holistically all-inclusive. If you wanted to do this and spend out another couple hours to list out more players that pop into your head who may have a higher aggregate market portion of the pie that can really solidify this data, be my guest. But as it stands now, in terms of total dollars spent, this is a good representation of what my feel is for the market in terms of how many dollars are being spent less on individual singles. Now, I'm not going to go into this in this video. I'm going to do this in separate videos, but it gets very interesting whenever you look at this as it relates to the grading companies. So whenever you start looking at these search terms for PSA, for Beckett, SGC, CSG, it's fascinating to see how their book of business is being impacted in terms of volume of cards that are being sold on the marketplace, the average sales price for those cards, etc. That's a fascinating look. But then also looking at case breaks, box breaks, etc. for breakers. Obviously, a lot of those are solicited on eBay. Now you have to be an approved breaker in order to sell those slots on eBay. Of course, that's a growing part of the hobby. It is a disgusting part of the hobby that I'm not a big fan of. I wish it would go away, but it's very interesting to see how box prices and case prices and the breaks themselves how that has changed over time too, because as we look at the overall market, the singles market in terms of dollars being spent into those players individually, we can quantitatively see has decreased by almost 40%. And if you want to say the Hall of Famers are balancing that out, then I would argue that the conservative number that the total market dollars has dropped by roughly 30%. That's a conservative number. But if we factor in how many dollars are still being allocated to box breaks and case breaks, that one's a fascinating one because those dollars have not changed for the negative. But that's a teaser for another video for another day. So let me know what you all think down below. Is this a good representative feel for how you think the market has performed over the past 1, 2, and 3 years? And what other thoughts do you all have on this? Again, happy holidays. No, I haven't had a lot of videos out there. Honestly, the hobby has just not really been that great of a place and an interesting place. I'm not a big fan of all the things that Fanatics has going and the direction that it's going, but still like to make content every now and then. So glad to put this video out. Merry Christmas, everybody, and we'll talk to you later.